Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Genshin Impact set of reactions. Today we have two from, of course, Harshit in the comments of the last video, who wants me to get to the Temple of Space entrance and Pillar Hall themes. I don't know what the Temple of Space is. I'm assuming it's something from the newer chunk of like the Nod Cry stuff, like up north, the lunar stuff. I don't even recognize that as a title, so it must be very new, but I suppose that doesn't really matter as long as I'm listening to the music. So without further ado, let's go! Okay, so we're just doing Latin now. Sorry, wait a minute. Is that the opening screen up there? Sorry, the lore thickens. I mean, it does make sense, but also, We're doing just like a chromatic staircase, just up, 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 down, down, up, 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 down, down, just keeping that flow. I love the drone for the brass. Ooh, fading it out to just the vocals. I actually really like that at the end there. Just like completely removing anything else and just making it the vocal at the very end. I don't know why that feels so profound, but it does. I really like that. So I talk about beauty and simplicity quite often on this channel, and this song is definitely no slouch in that department. I love how simple this one is because it is really truly just the vocals running the show for a lot of it. And like, it might not feel like that because of how the song is building with these other instruments and there's that body behind it, but the vocals are what show up first and leave last, you know? They're like the custodian at a school. They show up first, they last to leave. And the reason that I love this is because it sets this precedent of the song to be about the people, of the people, by the people, for the people. And then everything else is swelling and building around that and creating this giant cascade of beauty behind it. Like, it's a supportive sort of feeling to this song. The vocals are there and they're telling you the story. They are the ones feeding you the information about the tale of this place and the reason that this theme exists. But then as the rest of the instruments come in, they just support the vocals. I've talked about that a few times too, I believe, even in Genshin music. They do it a lot. It's just a good practice in general. But the reason that this one feels so nice to me is a pretty simple reason. It's B, C, D. That's basically everything that we got going on here. And there you have your entire progression. That's mostly where things tend to lay, but we also do get this build of, which adds that tension, just kind of playing up on that B and just kind of, you know, creating that little bit. You can feel that tension in there with that note there. That G is really doing a lot of work. I feel like it does root itself in G more than I would have expected, but I don't think it ever actually uses like the chord of G because it would get in the way of this relationship on the B, having this in here. It would just clash a little bit too much. So I don't think they ever actually use the G, and if they do, it's a very slight usage. But either way, we have this and of course that build, but then when it goes up to the C, we just use that one. Which is weird because usually you would do that. That would be the C major 7th and it would feel much more full as it does. But I like that relationship of having this one start with this and why this chord does use that same note, it still has to raise somewhere else, and it does that just by taking one extra note out of it, and that note happens to be right here, where we would lead up to the B for that full C. And I actually really like what they do with this C in here too, because we do have that standard C, and usually, like I said, we would have that note in there for that nice little tensive chord. But the way that they actually play it out this time is instead of going to that normal tensive chord, they build it up by going, and they build back into that bass line of the B. I didn't transition to the chord there just because my fingers didn't want to, but you get the point. Having just that full octave being in that and being able to carry through this, and as you can hear with that D inclusion there, that's where that note comes from. That's where the A inclusion happens. So that sort of, this build in here is native to the chords that we're playing already, and it just is such a good progression. A simple one, and there is a little bit of movement in here. Like, I think that this gets used at one point, which is weird, but I like it, you know? Like, that kind of, it touches on similar issues why I didn't want to go into how these two would break apart if we included the G there. Those two would get in the way. This kind of does the same thing with these two. But the reason that it works there is just because it's not connected to those specific chords. This is just what happens. You're allowed to do things like that in the composition that would butt heads with each other if there are chords played right next to each other. But if they're separated from each other, you don't hear that dissonance nearly as aggressively, so you don't really need to worry about it. But this is a great introduction to this area for me, so I at least have a ground to work off of. Now I have a place for my feet to plant and know what to expect for whatever the pillar hall is going to be. And I suppose since I'm done yapping about this one, we can get to that one now. So without further ado, let's go. Okay, very different. Just immediately. Already way more involved. Ooh. Okay, sorry, that bass line feels like it's... Yeah, it's a little dissonant. It's fighting a little bit. Okay, the vocals aren't driving this one as much. This time, they're the support. That darkness in there is something else. It's subtle, but it's there. Now, what is this telling me? It's definitely, I don't know if sorrowful is the right word for it. It's definitely more emotionally dark, but that's where the separation of the vocals and the instrumental is coming back into play, because this one isn't driven by the vocals this time around. It's driven by the emotion of the instruments, which is different from what we just heard and what I thought I had as like a ground to be able to stand on. But now they're changing it a little bit. Not entirely. It's more like they're just kind of shaking hands, you know? But okay, I mean, that's definitely different. All right, so this one musically, very simple, very straightforward. It doesn't really move anywhere. It just follows the exact same pattern the whole way through. So we get A minor, G, F, E. That's the entire song basically all of it. And of course, the melody just kind of landing somewhere in those chords all the way through. So it's not like this huge musical piece, but what it does do is pull you down with it. It wants to bring you down. It wants you to feel like you're settling somewhere, and between the A minor and the E, that's a great set of chords to do that. Funny enough, if you bounce this up a little bit, you get some like electro swing sort of things. You know, so just, if I ruin the song for you there, sorry about that. It'll now be electro swing in your head for the rest of eternity. Either way though, beautiful song. I love the tenderness of this chord progression. It's not that it's a bad chord progression. It's just that it's the only thing that happens in this song, and it is leading the charge for the energy. Like I mentioned, the instrumental is what's keeping this song going, and that flow of the emotion is there because of that. The vocals are there to add a little bit of spice on top of the meal, but what we're getting for the majority of it is just a simple and very straightforward chord progression downward, and it doesn't really do any other sort of pattern adjustments, nothing. There's not really another section to this song. The vocals are kind of doing that, but that's just, you know, running on the scale. It's not really changing anything in the song. The story itself is very much placed in this, here's this sadness, you know, like I mentioned, it was kind of sad. I feel like forlorn is probably a better word, but also I feel like I've used that a lot, but it is kind of apt for this song. It feels very much like that forgotten thought, that idea lost in time, and that would make sense for the area, supposedly. Again, I don't know this Temple of Space location, but I'm assuming that it's one of those giant abandoned things. And if it is related to Celestia, which would make sense for the whole entry thing that I saw in the first picture, this all tracks, you know? Emotionally, that tracks. Something that feels distant and lost, not necessarily depressing and sad and just completely lost to that emotion. There is still a beauty to it, but it's one of those beauties where you're just like, man, there used to be life here. This used to be something. This used to mean something. And look at it now. Look what it's become. And that's kind of the essence I think that this song is going for. Not really having lyrics also doesn't really help in this case. I'm assuming there were technically lyrics for the first song. I just didn't look up the Latin to figure out what that would be. But for this one, I don't think that there really was. I mostly just heard the tones. I didn't really hear any individual lyrics. If they are in there, they were vague enough that I really couldn't tell that they were lyrics. It just kind of sounded like random vocalizing, which is totally fine as well, just to get the emotion across, you know? That's this song, getting the emotion across, the energy there, rather than trying to tell you a story directly with lyrics or otherwise. You don't really need that, because you can feel that this is an area that is stuck in that time period, that lasting feeling of, man, this was something. And now we have to figure out what it was and be able to piece all those parts together. We don't know, you know? That's what I love about this sound. The first song definitely explored a little bit more of the energy of where this could go, and it had this like lift to it, this hopeful lilt that kind of just floats off into the ether. But this one doesn't really have that as much as it does just, it knows that it's tired. And that's okay, you know? It's beautiful in its own right, but these are the things that set the tone of the area you're in. The type of music where if you took it out of the context of where it is in specific this space, you would be like, what the hell, why is this theme here? This feels so empty, barren, and bland, and not really much going on. But in the context, it works so well. I had a similar feeling with the Enkanomiya stuff when I heard that. I was like, man, this works. Given what I know about the lore and why it's there, it makes more sense, you know? Most things do. It makes sense for the area, so it'll reflect that better, and if you know where that is and why that is, it helps. But that's exactly why the beauty lies in the simplicity for this, because you don't really need anything more than the raw emotion that the song is telling you. But as far as that goes, they did a really good job. I don't really know anything else from the Temple of Space stuff, because I'm pretty sure this is all I've heard from this area, at very least directly, so there might be more that kind of challenges that a little bit more, and maybe we'll get something a little bit more aggressive. It kind of just depends on what the context is of that moment, of course. But I think I am done yapping about these. I think I've covered everything I want to, so thank you all so very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and you want me to get to something else from Genshin, by all means, drop in the comments below, and I will do my best as always to get to those. Or if you don't want to do any of that, maybe just want to follow me and support me for more stuff coming in the future, you know how to do all that, and I'll see all of you in the next video. Goodbye!